Welcome to Underrated to Unstoppable, the podcast where we explore the journey from self doubt to self acceptance. I'm your host, Charlene Wheeless. In today's episode, I sit down with executive coach and former C suite leader, Evelyn Rodstein, for a profound conversation about what it really means to feel enough. Evelyn brings a unique perspective, combining her background as a family therapist with decades of experience coaching Fortune 100 executives. We dive deep into the difference between healthy humility in the face of big challenges and the shame-based feelings of inadequacy that hold so many of us back. Evelyn shares her powerful framework about triggers from our places of origin and how understanding these patterns can transform how we show up as leaders. You'll also hear our candid discussion about reaching that pivotal moment of self-acceptance, why it often doesn't come until our 50s, and the bittersweet feeling of mourning all those years spent trying to prove ourselves to people who didn't really matter. This is a conversation about shame, self-compassion, and the courage to tell the world you are enough. Let's get to it. You had written in your paperwork about triggers from our places of origin.
Yes.
Yes, so tell me about that, because I haven't heard it worded quite that way.
Okay. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background about me
Yes,
so this
of
makes
course.
sense. I was originally an individual and family therapist,
Mhm.
and then I transitioned to corporate life where I was a C-suite leader like you, Charlene, under a lot of pressure in Fortune 100 companies running leadership and talent.
Right.
Past 15 years, I've been an executive coach. And
Hmm.
I would say almost every day I'm dealing with someone who does not feel like they are enough.
Hmm.
And so I look at it on three dimensions.
Hmm.
One dimension is healthy. I'm not enough. It's a
Okay.
big challenge. I'm CEO. I'm
Hmm.
facing a merger and I'm worrying about my 20,000 people who work for me.
Hmm.
Now I feel like literally they're on my shoulders. Am I enough to
Hmm.
carry this through? Or a young venture-backed entrepreneur who's 30 years old and he's been given all this money and he's never managed before.
Right.
Will say, do I am enough to run this company? Both of those people are coming from a healthy place of I am not enough. Because
Hmm.
what they're saying is, this is a big challenge. I
Hmm.
don't know if I can do it. And there, I have humility in the face of it because I'm values driven and care about the outcomes,
Right.
about the quarterly reports, and I care about the people.
Hmm.
And that's one of the most beautiful things is to see a senior leader come to face with not vulnerability, but just the actual realistic evaluation of the challenge and saying, can I do this?
Right.
Because once they do this, they can then say, well, I can't do it without others. I
Right.
have to build a strong management team. I
Hmm.
have to get advice from a coach or a mentor. I have to ensure the board is honest with me.
Hmm.
And once you realize you're not enough, you become
Hmm.
open to growing and getting the resources you need, as opposed to what I've seen some senior executives do, which is shut down that feeling because they feel ashamed of it.
Hmm.
They don't even know they're having that feeling of I'm not enough. Instead, they will blame, oh, the markets aren't good enough, or get paranoid.
Hmm.
Oh, the this person is my enemy, or micromanage their people to death because they're
Right.
successful. So an executive, a leader who does not know when he is not enough or
Mhm.
she is not enough is not always a great executive.
Right.
That's the business challenge.
Hmm.
Now, as a family therapist slash coach, I
Hmm.
look from what is not enough from another perspective that I weave in.
Hmm.
All of us want unconditional love. There was
Right.
a study by John Bowlby that was done after World War II with healthy infants
Hmm.
and babies in healthy facilities to hold all the orphans, but they weren't held and they weren't picked up. They
Right.
had failure to thrive. They died
Hmm.
and they were being fed, medically taken care of. The need to be unconditionally loved is a beautiful need. It isn't always met, or it's met imperfectly.
Right, right. I mean, unconditional love is pretty tough. I mean, if um, if I think about it, I have unconditional love from my pets, my two dogs, right?
Yes.
And
Hmm.
I give them unconditional love. But
Yes.
I'm not sure I have it anywhere else in my life.
Yes.
I am loved, but I'm not sure it's unconditional.
Well, that's where we go to the next, and this is the last psychological concept I'm going to throw at you, which is Winnicott's good enough mothering.
Hmm.
Many of us come from good enough parents, but it doesn't mean we don't have triggers or repetitions of family patterns. So I'll give you a few examples. I will give one from me, okay, because it's always best to start with yourself. I was one of five kids. My parents both worked. So I was the oldest girl. I took care of everything and everyone.
Right,
Okay.
right. You took on that role.
I took on that role. I could never be enough. Right.
Hmm.
So when I became a leader, I had to let go of not being enough by thinking I could control the fate of a 200,000 person company,
Right.
or I could ensure that I could execute this program brilliantly, or it had to do with my trigger of needing to make everything right.
Hmm.
It always couldn't be right. And as
Okay.
you know, corporate life,
Hmm.
you cannot always make everything right. So that's a trigger. I have another client who she had abusive parents, not physically abusive, but angry, perfectionistic, difficult parents. She had
Right,
a big
right.
ego. So what happened with her? She associated holding people accountable with being mean,
Uh,
with
okay.
being difficult. That's a repetition. She had to get through that to manage people appropriately.
Hmm.
So if most of us have grown up with something that leads us
Right.
to feel like we're not good enough, and it's all
Hmm.
different.
Hmm. Yeah.
And I think all of us, some people it's huge, some people it's minor. You could
Hmm.
have somebody who, yeah, it can be minor. It could be somebody who someone who would go woodworking with his father. And when the wood work was, if you make one chip in woodwork, you have to throw the whole thing out.
Right.
That's
Right.
how he ran his company.
Hmm.
I always look for a family of origin pattern, which
Hmm.
contribute to someone not feeling enough when I work with clients. But I don't do therapy. The line is clear.
Hmm.
Something light. And if they understand themselves, if they have humility to the business challenge, understand their triggers, those are two things that lead them to managing that not feeling enough.
Hmm. But I think there's a big difference between um, facing a business challenge and the fear of whether or not you have everything you need, and whether you're up for the challenge. I think that's a different feeling of not being enough than that, internal feeling that just pulls you down, because that either pulls you down or creates some kind of level of hypervigilance,
Yes,
because your belief is that deep down you are lacking, right? And to me, that's different than, I've faced many challenges in the business world of things. It's like, oh my goodness,
yes,
am I ready to take this on?
yeah,
And that wasn't really driven by am I enough? That was more driven by fear and do I know enough? And do I know, how to get the resources that I need?
yes,
And to me, that's very different from that deep-seated feeling that you just don't measure up, right? That somehow, if you believe in a higher power, I believe in God, and they say
yes,
God doesn't make mistakes. And it's like, oh my gosh, I'm the one mistake he made.
yes.
I think I consider those different things. What's your take on that?
Well, mine was combined, so I'll go to my
Uh-huh.
journey because I think it's helpful.
Hmm.
Because again, I had this feeling that I had to control everything, that everything had
Right.
to be good, that I was never good enough unless I could make everything good enough for everybody else.
Mm. Right. So what would happen if you would when you couldn't control everything.
Then here's one of the first lessons I learned, and this is how I teach people to manage. Firstly, understand, number one, understand the challenge. Number two, understand your triggers. Understand what it is that happened within your world and your ecosystem and your childhood and your environment that made you feel like you can't measure up. Because I actually don't feel that way anymore.
Right.
I don't feel that way now. I did much younger.
Hmm.
So I'll tell you, my journey started when I was a therapist. I never worried about my being enough. I worried about my clients being enough. And I was in service to them.
Hmm.
I was in service to them. I had values. So I would be home on the subway at 9 o'clock at night reading psychology textbook back from the night clinic because
Uh-huh.
I wasn't thinking about me being enough. I was thinking about what can I do to be of service to them.
Hmm.
And slowly I got better and better. I became a supervising clinician. I had more impact. And I began to feel not just competent as a therapist, but competent as a human who could help another human.
Right.
Help
Right.
another human. And once you can help, for in my system, helping another human is a way that made me feel enough.
Hmm.
I transitioned to investment banking and I was hired in and as a, I was going to be managing director of leadership. I didn't have an MBA. I didn't understand business. And every single thing I did every day was something I'd never done before.
Hmm.
But I wasn't afraid
Right.
because I knew I could learn.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I valued people. And the most important thing, especially in investment banking, is I wasn't afraid of wealth.
Right.
I
Yeah.
wasn't afraid of anybody.
Uh-huh.
It was my values around other people and learning. And I got promoted very quickly to managing director. And I had success after success. I also had failures. And
Hmm.
one of those failures that was so interesting, it was a big meeting, a big, leadership event. And it crashed because the speaker I had hired refused to talk about what I had asked him 10 times.
Mm.
And the head of trading put his arm around me and he said, Evelyn, bad trade, move on.
Right. Right.
And you go through so many cycles of this succeeding, failing, but if you still want to learn and you still want to contribute slowly over time, my feelings of not being enough are very different than they were in my 20s and my
Hmm.
30s, my
Hmm.
40s. They're different now. I
Right.
actually feel, and a lot of it has to do with, in my value system, is having had those experiences of
Hmm.
failure and success
Hmm.
and knowing I can live them, continuously hungry to learn, and being of service to others. So it's not always about me.
Right. Right.
And so I think that I work with a lot of clients who don't feel like they're enough, especially
Hmm.
women. It's really
Right.
hard with
Mhm.
women. Okay. And there's a lot of neurology behind this. The default neural network, the brain goes to the negative. We have some
Right.
critical narratives that are very hard to control. And there's been so much written about that.
Hmm.
I don't need to repeat it. We know that we need to shift our mindsets, ask ourselves hard questions, be grateful, honor our successes. There's a ton of techniques out there, but the techniques don't work unless you build that inner core,
Right.
knowing who you are now. I know you, Charlene, you
Mhm.
have been through hell and back, okay? And
Yeah,
you've
you could
done
say that.
difficult journeys. And
Hmm.
I would say, I would ask you, how has that feeling evolved for you? Because the two of us have been through big lives.
Right.
How
Right.
does it evolve for you? You've been a leader, you've been a
Mhm.
patient, you've been a speaker. I mean, how has that evolved for you? Your feelings of enoughness.
Yeah, clever way. You're turning the
I am a
question
coach.
around, just like a therapist.
Yes, or a coach.
Or a coach, absolutely. And I would say, for me, it's a little complicated because, growing up in the circumstances that I did,
Yes,
right? You just kind of didn't matter, right? So you never thought about being enough because you didn't matter enough to think
yes,
about being enough. But then
yes,
you get older and being, a Black female, society teaches you that you're not enough because there are
Yeah.
just things that are not available to you, right?
Yes.
And so you start to say, well, if I was enough, these things would be available to me. Um, and so, I think for me, you know, um, early on, I in my life or in my career, I guess when I was probably 14 or 15, I decided that I was just going to kind of buck the system. I was going to be the trailblazer. And I enjoyed that role. I paid dearly for it from a health perspective, but um, it wasn't until I went through all of that and
Yeah.
the cancer and twice and it wasn't until I think I was probably 55 years old when I finally realized that I had always been enough and that I had wasted so much time and effort trying to prove that to people who didn't really matter because they weren't open to hearing it.
Yes. Yes. And often will say to my clients, if I had a vaccine
Mhm.
that I could vaccinate with you, especially the younger ones,
Mhm.
that would tell you that 20 years from now, you will feel better about this. You will feel more
Right.
confident in your enoughness. What breaks my heart is not the young ones,
Mhm.
but it's the women and men in their 50s who haven't gotten there yet.
Right.
And they don't ask for enough.
Mhm.
And they don't treat themselves as enough. And
Right. They don't understand
those
value.
break my heart because they've been so ingrained,
Mhm.
and you have to break them out of it.
Yeah.
And they do not, they get the worst assignment.
Mhm.
They don't get paid. They don't complain.
Right.
People get promoted over them. I see all this talent that gets frustrated because
Mhm.
they haven't gotten to that point.
Right.
And I think it is tremendously important um, to help unleash that the essential value, and this is my own belief system, that all people are enough. A
Right.
child born with disabilities that cannot see or hear is still enough.
Mhm.
It's still of value.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really, you have to, they're still of value. Their
Mhm.
being is of value. And
Right.
I think that belief system comes often with age. And you
Mhm.
have, when you work with, sometimes with old souls,
Right.
well,
Mhm.
so when I'm working with a younger leader, I work differently than with a senior leader on this issue.
Right.
And for it's a journey.
Mhm.
It's a journey. It's a journey, and we have the daily tools, but an
Mhm.
affirmation isn't going to do it.
Right.
A mindset shift isn't going to do it alone.
Mhm.
It's cerebral. It's
Right.
felt in the parts of our it's probably felt in our pain receptors somewhere,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So all the cerebral stuff we teach and we try and help people with isn't enough to get
Right, to get them there. I've been thinking lately, and well, I mean, I think all the time,
yeah, yes,
but particularly, and as you get older, uh, you are very much aware of how much time you may or may not have left.
yes,
You're very, very aware of your mortality. And while turning 60 didn't really bother me, but I'll be 61 this year. And for some reason, I seem to be having a harder time with that. And now, and even in doing this series, now that I am so confident that I'm enough, I really mourn the
years,
previous 40
wasted years.
years
Yep.
that I didn't know that, and you've heard me say a gazillion times my mantra of it's choice, not chance, that changes your life. And, you can lead a life by chance and have a very successful life if success is money and influence and hierarchy and all of that. Um, but it was a life by chance, not necessarily by choice.
Yes.
And I don't know. I guess I just have to say, oh, Charlene, just get over it. But I do mourn that um, even though I had all the creature comforts, did I waste all that time?
Well, I think this is a really interesting question because um, at this stage, a lot of people have worked for me. I've been a leader, sometimes been a good
Mm,
leader, and I've been a not so good leader,
right, right.
One of the things that I'm grateful for is the people who I worked for coming back to me and telling me what
Mm,
kind of boss or how I had helped them or colleagues.
right.
Also, sometimes telling me why I wasn't such a great boss,
Right,
but to
right.
have that trust. So
Mm,
for me, I did that as an imperfect human being.
right,
I mean, I remember that need to have closure and to
right.
control all
Oh,
of
yeah.
that. Sometimes that can create a lot of anxiety with people.
Hmm.
To Evelyn, I go into my meeting with you anxious. I
Right.
regret the moments when I wasn't always the best leader, and I regret the moments when someone, and you must feel this too in corporate life, when someone did not value my gift
Mm,
and I felt bad about myself.
right.
Those are the moments I regret.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I would go back to my younger self and say, when that happens, and it's not a learning moment,
Hmm.
it's not a learning moment where
Right.
you couldn't get the speaker to speak what he
Mhm.
wanted, right?
Right.
When
Right.
it's not a learning moment, but it's someone else's agenda, I regret the time I spent feeling bad about myself.
Right.
I
Right.
do. And I try with my clients to make sure they know this will fade. I can promise you. You've just been fired, or you've just been cut out
Right.
of a meeting, or you've just been or you didn't get the funding you needed, or this company,
Right.
this will fade.
Hmm.
This will fade in time.
Right.
A topic I've thought about a lot for Charlene,
Hmm.
our discussion is I'm at the stage now where I'm like, how do I let the world know that I am enough?
Hmm.
Right?
Right. Right.
Because we as women
Hmm.
leaders, a lot of the time, it looks as bragging
Right.
or it looks as overly self-confident.
Yeah.
But what is this?
I'm these days in my life, I just flat out call bullshit on it.
Yeah,
Like if I'm going to talk about my accomplishments and I'm going to do it um in a meaningful way from the heart, if someone can't accept it and says, oh, well, she just brags all the time, well,
yeah.
then you know what? We're just not for each other. And
I
that's okay,
love that. I
right?
love that.
And that's okay. We're just going to move on. But I also think that when you really feel like you're enough and the world needs to know it, I think you put out a completely different energy, right?
Yes.
And people see that and they pick up on that energy. And there will always be those people who say, I was always taught humility. Well, I think you can talk about how great you are and still have humility, right? It's not that I'm saying I'm great and you're not, right? That's not, that's not having humility at all.
And
But
that, yeah. And that's like getting your clients to be able to say, I can do this job.
right,
I can be this CEO. And sometimes we can appear, I don't want to say self-effacing, but not everybody is like
right,
out there. People always underestimate everything I have done
right,
because I happen to have a warm and friendly persona and they don't know how tough I've had to be.
right, right.
Um, so I have to manage that,
Hmm.
my business world. In my clients' business world, they also have to make sure that they don't get underestimated. And this happens particularly to women and people of color a lot of the time. People don't underestimate. They can be CEO, they can be this just because they're not in the traditional
Right.
box.
Yeah.
They cannot and they should not underestimate their accomplishments. They are enough and
Hmm.
they have to and they have to tell the world they're enough. And I think that's what you're doing too.
Yeah, it's a,
It's helpful. It's helpful for others who come along after
mhm.
because part of this phase of what Eric Eric Erickson would call generativity versus stagnation,
Right.
is
Right.
knowing that you are enough and have
Mhm.
something to give. Look at our mentor, Marshall Goldsmith, right?
Right. Right. Yeah.
He is enough, he
Yeah,
is learning, and he is giving.
constantly, right? And I look at, being underestimated is like my superpower, right?
Hmm.
It's like I go into places, I want
I
you to
know.
underestimate me, right? Please underestimate me so I can blow you the hell away with what I can do,
Yeah,
right? And that has, I found, in corporate spaces and in other
yeah,
spaces, and because there are certain spaces where people, they look at me and they see long hair and they see
great.
this and they see that and they come up with these things. I'm like, please underestimate me,
Yeah,
because I am going to blow you away. And of course, the advantage of being underestimated that I think, because you have to turn these things around, right, to your
yeah,
benefit. And so I think one of the advantages of being underestimated is people pretty much ignore what you're doing, right?
yes. That
So
was a lot
that,
of my corporate life. I
right.
was a managing director, but I was a
Right.
pleasant, gentle person.
Right. So nobody pays attention. So it's like, great. That just means I need to ask for forgiveness and not permission. Right.
Exactly.
Well, everybody else who fits into the mold are waiting to ask for permission. I'm going to go over here and be a trailblazer. Now, I might get in trouble later, but I had a whole lot of fun doing it. Right. And,
Yeah.
you just have to turn these things into what works for you. And I think that one thing I think that happens a lot to people if they don't feel like they're enough, they constantly put themselves in situations and environments that
Replicating.
create that self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, they
Right.
replicate it. They
Right.
replicate it.
Again and again. And they don't know it. They're doing it, I assume, subconsciously.
Yeah.
Um, but I can think of certain times in my life where it's like, why did I even put myself in that situation?
Yes.
Because I knew what I was getting into and I did it anyway.
You see that with abuse and neglect,
Right.
that with adults who've
Hmm.
experienced, I mean, true abuse and neglect.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you see those who fight from it and somehow get away from it, and those who replicate, put themselves in roles where that happens. Um, I think when I work with clients, the feeling of not enough, what's important about what you're doing is they often have shame about it.
Right. Hmm.
And especially men, they will feel ashamed about not having that feeling, so they'll hide it.
Right.
And I think that what you're doing with your initiative is no one should feel ashamed because they feel like they're not enough. We're all on this journey
Hmm.
who, except for those who were somehow had perfect unconditional love, which I don't know where that
Right.
exists.
Yeah. Where can I find that?
Yeah, exactly. All of us, all of us go through these stages, and you don't want to feel shame. You
Hmm.
want to say, this is an invitation for me to self-affirm and to learn and to do things that make me know and to have relationships, positive
Right.
relationships as a mother, as a wife, as a community member, as a professional, to feel
Right.
like I'm enough. But the taking the shame away from it
Hmm.
is really important.
No, that's brilliant actually, because a lot of it, if I think about it, underneath it is shame for a lot of different reasons. I'm
Most
sure
people,
it's
they're
different
shame.
for everybody.
Most people feel ashamed of it.
Right,
And then there are these easy answers, but they don't deal with the shame.
right. And unless you deal with the underlying issue, you're just not dealing
That
with.
you're just repeating mantras to yourself and hoping they'll
Right.
work. And that has a place.
Hmm.
But you have to go back to why am I ashamed of this?
Right,
I mean, this is like it's and those shame that we have to get the shame is the bad feeling.
right,
Not enough
right.
is a healthy feeling for most of us.
Hmm.
It's the shame about it that causes the problem. So if you had a father who threw all your woodwork away, you
Hmm.
feel ashamed as a young boy. That shame is deep and
Yeah.
it's hidden. And if you can pull that out,
Hmm.
um, I mean, if you can pull that out, then they can feel like, oh, well, that was stupid. That was just my father's idiotic woodworking
Right.
perfection. And there's nothing wrong with me. And
Yeah.
then go further.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, and then I'll get to our ending question because I'm taking up more of your time than I promised.
Yeah.
But so I grew up with an absent father, and
Yes.
um, although he was absent from my life, he was active in my brothers' lives, my three brothers,
Yes.
and I spent so much time wondering what was wrong with me that he couldn't love me.
Yes.
So
And that,
much time. And then he died, I think when I want to say I was in my 40s when he died. And I realized that I would never have the answer to that question. And I felt so free
yes.
once he died, one, knowing that I would never have the answer to that question. And then it took me another probably 5 years or so to realize, you know, that was about him, not
Yes.
me. Right.
Loss of shame. There
Right.
you go. Bingo.
Yeah.
That was not, that was the inverse of unconditional love. And it made you feel
Right.
that there was something wrong with you and you
Right.
felt shame and you hide it and you overcompensate. And that's
Right.
the cultural factors we discussed.
Mhm.
You overcompensate, but if you don't let go of, I am enough, it was my father's loss. He couldn't do it for whatever reasons he couldn't.
Right.
I'm in this corporation, I'm being downsized.
Mhm.
Well, if the bosses don't see the value of the work on leadership development, they want to pay more for compliance, that's a corporate decision. It's not
Right.
about me. It's
Mhm.
all getting away from that. And then sometimes we're actually not enough.
Right.
Sometimes I've taken on things that I really shouldn't have taken on. I think it's like you have to deal with, there's shame and then there's not enough and then there's hiding it as opposed to owning it,
Right.
releasing it, and learning and moving into relationships and
Mhm.
work that makes you know you're of value. But I will end with a funny story
Okay.
because we need some funny stories.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, absolutely. So I sort of feel like I'm enough at this stage. I'm really proud of what I've done as a mother, as
Mhm.
a wife, as a professional. I've been through a lot of hardship, but I
Mhm.
have survived it. But the other night, I was at a cocktail party, and this woman came in about my age. And I
Mhm.
was talking to her about literature. And she was 5'10", absolutely gorgeous, hair down to here,
Mhm.
stunning cheekbones. And I was feeling really inadequate. Okay. And I'm like, we're talking about literature, and I'm feeling worse and worse. And then my husband comes over to me later and says, Evelyn, you were just talking to one of the most famous supermodels out there. And suddenly I no longer felt inadequate.
Right.
Oh,
Right.
that's her lane. Her lane
That's
is to be a
her. Right.
supermodel, be 5'10", and use her
Right.
gifts of beauty. She also happened to be very intelligent and lovely, which is why I didn't get it. And my
Right.
lane is to be a great leader, executive coach.
Mhm.
That's my lane. So I
Right.
immediately stopped. But during the whole conversation, I was like, oh my God, how did you? And if it
Right.
was like I just was too dumb to not on social media to know that I was talking to a very
Right.
famous supermodel. But I think I used that with an analogy with a client the other day.
Mhm.
This client is a technical expert in technology. He's a
Mhm.
genius. And they put somebody over him who has run global businesses.
Mhm.
And he's saying, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I said, there's nothing wrong with you. He's run 30 global businesses, which means he knows fraud in every country in the world.
Right.
You
Right.
are the most brilliant programmer, technology, AI genius in the world. You
Mhm.
are enough in your lane. He
Right.
is in his lane.
And
You don't
his
want to
life.
be in his lane.
Right.
I don't need to be a supermodel.
Mhm.
Okay.
Right.
But I
Right.
think they say comparison is the thief of joy.
Boy, is it ever. And
So anytime we feel like we're not enough, we can
mhm.
say, I'm talking to that supermodel over there.
Right. Yeah. Right. Exactly. But one thing that I think is really neat about that story
Yeah,
is that you were paying more attention to her intellect and you were not judging her beauty except in how her beauty made you feel.
short.
Right, right,
Made
right.
me feel short.
But I think there's something beautiful about that because often when people are standing in front of people who are beautiful, they make so many judgments about them being beautiful that they never even get to the point of being able to have an intellectual conversation. But
Yeah.
that because they've put so much water or baggage or whatever you want to call it in the way.
So I would say the answer to that is if you are not feeling enough,
Mhm.
explore your own shame, open up in love, and show
Mhm.
self-compassion to yourself, but also importantly, show self-compassion to others, like you did
Right.
to your father,
Mhm.
which is that was him. We don't know why, we don't know how, we'll never
Right.
know. Let it go.
Right.
It's in being interested in who comes new into your room,
Right.
come into that room and make
Mhm.
you find yourself whole
Right.
again.
Oh, those are beautiful words to end on, Evelyn. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I just really appreciate it. I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate you sharing yourself with us and your story and what you're doing. And well, I could be president of the Evelyn Ronstein fan club.
I feel
So,
that way about you, Charlene, because
it's
I think you have been my wish for you. You have been such a role model
oh,
and a hero, and your sharing your story will help so many others.
yeah,
Help
I hope
so
so.
many others. It will help so many others.
Yeah.
And I value our relationship greatly.
Yes.
And
Yes.
thank you for being a friend and for taking the time to interview me.
Of course, and thank you because I know when I've had some tough coaching situations or something I wasn't quite sure of, you have always answered my call when I've said, "Hey, has anybody ever encountered this? What should I do?" And you have always been a great person for me to call and get some perspective from, and you've always openly, shared your views and your thoughts and your help. So I appreciate that too. I appreciate you as much as you appreciate me.
So let's continue the
Yeah.
relationship.
Yes, we will continue our love fest. But
Okay.
in the meantime, have a great rest of your week.
You too, my dear.
Okay. Bye bye.
Bye-bye.